The autumn rain hammered against the windows of Jefferson Middle School as Maya Rodriguez wiped down cafeteria tables with mechanical efficiency. At 36, she'd become an expert at being invisible. Head down, movements practiced, blending into the background of other people's lives. The lunch period had just ended, and she had exactly 45 minutes to clean the entire cafeteria before the next shift of students arrived. "Excuse me, miss?" A boy's voice cut through her concentration. Maya looked up to find a gangly 13-year-old with dark hair and worried eyes standing beside her cart. Her son, Diego. "What's wrong, Mijo?" she asked quietly, switching to English when she noticed other staff members nearby. "Coach Henderson wants to see you after school about the permission slip for the field trip." Diego's voice was tight with anxiety. "I told him you'd be working, but he said it was important." Maya's stomach dropped. The field trip to the Naval Museum in Norfolk. She'd deliberately not signed the permission slip because she couldn't afford the $30 fee. But she couldn't tell Diego that, couldn't let him see how close to the edge they were living. "I'll talk to him," she promised. "Now get back to class before you're late." After Diego left, Maya returned to her work with renewed intensity. This job at the school paid minimum wage, but it came with health insurance and hours that matched Diego's schedule. Her second job, night cleaning at an office building downtown, paid the rent. Between the two, she managed to keep them fed and housed, but there was never anything extra. Never room for field trips or new clothes or the things that would help Diego feel normal. She'd been living this way for 3 years, ever since she'd resigned her commission and disappeared with then 10-year-old Diego. Lieutenant Commander Maya Steel Cobra Rodriguez, one of the most decorated female officers in naval special warfare history, reduced to cleaning cafeteria tables and hopping nobody recognized her. At 3:30, Maya knocked on Coach Henderson's office door, still wearing her custodial uniform. "Mrs. Rodriguez, thanks for coming." Henderson was a bulky man in his 50s who coached football and taught PE. "I wanted to talk about Diego." "Is he in trouble?" "No, nothing like that. He's a good kid, but I'm concerned about him. He doesn't participate in activities, keeps to himself, seems withdrawn. And now this field trip, all the other kids are going, but Diego says he can't afford it." Maya felt heat rise in her face. "Money's tight right now, I'm working on it." Henderson's expression softened. "Look, I don't mean to pry, but the school has assistance programs if you need help." "We don't need charity," Maya said sharply, then immediately regretted her tone. "I'm sorry, I appreciate the concern, but we'll manage." "Mrs. Rodriguez, Diego mentioned his father passed away a few years ago. That can't be easy, especially as a single parent." Henderson pulled out a form. "At least let me waive the field trip fee. I have discretionary funds for situations like this." Pride warred with practicality. Diego deserved to go on the trip to feel included for once. "Thank you," Maya said quietly. "That's very kind." After signing the permission slip, Maya returned to her custodial duties. She had another 3 hours of work at the school before her night shift started at 7. Diego would go to Mrs. Chen's apartment after school, their elderly neighbor who watched him for free in exchange for Maya helping with her groceries and occasional repairs. At 6:30, Maya clocked out and drove her aging Honda to the office building where she cleaned 4 nights a week. The building housed several businesses, including a military contracting firm on the 3rd floor. Maya usually avoided that floor, uncomfortable with how close it brought her to her former life. But tonight, the regular cleaner for the 3rd floor had called in sick, and Maya had been asked to cover. She steeled herself and took the elevator up, reminding herself that nobody here would recognize her. She was just another custodian, invisible and unremarkable. The contracting firm's offices were empty at this hour, just rows of cubicles and conference rooms. Maya worked methodically, emptying trash cans and wiping down surfaces. She was cleaning the main conference room when she noticed the whiteboard still had notes from a meeting, tactical diagrams, operation timelines, personnel assignments. Old instincts kicked in. Maya found herself analyzing the diagrams, noting flaws in the tactical approach, spotting vulnerabilities in the timeline. This was a security assessment for a military base, and whoever had planned it had made several critical errors. She caught herself shaking her head. Not your job anymore, she thought, not your problem. But as she erased the whiteboard, she couldn't help making mental notes. The approach they'd outlined would leave the eastern perimeter vulnerable for a 40-minute window. The communication protocols they'd proposed wouldn't account for electronic interference. The personnel rotation schedule created gaps in coverage. Maya finished cleaning and moved to the next office, forcing herself to stop thinking like an operator and focus on being a custodian. That life was over. She'd made her choice 3 years ago when Diego's safety became more important than her career, her identity, her entire sense of self. At 11 p.m., Maya drove home to their small apartment in a converted house on the edge of town. Mrs. Chen reported that Diego had done his homework and gone to bed at 9. Maya thanked her, locked the door behind her, and finally allowed herself to collapse on the couch. The apartment was tiny, one bedroom that Diego used while Maya slept on the couch, a kitchenette barely large enough for one person, a bathroom with permanently stained fixtures. But it was clean, it was safe, and most importantly, it was anonymous. Nobody here knew who she'd been. Nobody asked questions about her past. Maya pulled out the box she kept hidden in the coat closet, the only remnants of her former life. Her dress uniform, folded with military precision. Medals and ribbons in a felt-lined case. Photographs of her team of operations she could never discuss. And at the bottom, wrapped in cloth, her Cobra knife with steel Cobra engraved on the blade. She held the knife, remembering the woman who'd earned that call sign. They'd called her Steel Cobra because she struck fast and hard, never hesitating, never backing down. She'd led some of the most dangerous operations in naval special warfare history, earned the respect of men who didn't think women belonged in combat roles. And she'd been married to Commander Carlos Rodriguez, a fellow SEAL who'd been her partner in every sense of the word. They'd met during training, fallen in love despite regulations against it, eventually gotten married when they were assigned to different units. Carlos had died 3 years ago during a training exercise that wasn't supposed to be dangerous. The official report said equipment malfunction, but Maya had seen the maintenance logs, had noticed discrepancies in the timeline, had started asking questions that made powerful people uncomfortable. Then the threats started, not against her, she could have handled that, but against Diego. Someone broke into their house while Diego was home alone. Someone followed him home from school. Someone left a photo of Diego on their doorstep with a simple note: "Stop asking questions." Maya had made a choice that night. She'd resigned her commission, took Diego, and disappeared. Better to be alive and anonymous than dead and vindicated. For 3 years, she'd kept them hidden. She'd taken her mother's maiden name. Rodriguez was common enough to not attract attention. She'd changed her appearance, cut her long hair short, gained weight, stopped wearing makeup. She'd taken jobs that kept her invisible. And she'd taught Diego to never mention that his parents had been in the military, to never talk about his father, to never draw attention. It was working, they were safe. But sometimes, late at night when she couldn't sleep, Maya wondered what she'd lost besides her career, her sense of purpose, her identity, her belief that the system she'd devoted her life to actually valued justice and integrity. The next morning, Maya woke to Diego already dressed and eating cereal in the kitchen. "Morning, Mijo, sleep okay?" "Yeah," Diego didn't look up from his phone. "Coach said the field trip is next Friday. He said you paid the fee." "That's right." "Mom," Diego finally met her eyes. "Why didn't you tell me we couldn't afford it? I would have understood." The question hit harder than any punch Maya had taken in combat. "Because you're 13, you shouldn't have to worry about money. That's my job." "But I do worry. I know you work 2 jobs. I know we never have extra money. I'm not stupid." Maya sat down across from him. "You're not stupid. You're smart and observant and growing up too fast. I'm sorry, Diego. I'm doing the best I can." "I know," his voice softened. I miss when things were normal, when Dad was alive and we lived on base and I had friends." "I miss that too, baby, every single day." After Diego left for school, Maya sat alone in the quiet apartment. She was due at the school in an hour, but she couldn't shake the conversation. Diego was right. He was growing up too fast, forced to be mature beyond his years because of choices she'd made. Was this really better than fighting? Was safety worth the cost of everything else? Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Maya's heart rate spiked. 3 years of paranoia made every unexpected contact feel like a threat. The message was brief. "Package for Diego Rodriguez. Requires signature. Will deliver to Jefferson Middle School 1 p.m. today." Maya stared at the message, alarm bells ringing. They didn't get packages. She didn't order things online, couldn't risk the paper trail, and nobody knew Diego's full name except school records. She called the school office. "This is Maya Rodriguez. My son Diego is in 8th grade. Can you tell me if you've received any notifications about a package delivery today?" "Let me check. No, nothing in our system. Is there a problem?" "Probably not. Just wanted to confirm. Thanks." Maya ended the call, her tactical mind already running through scenarios. Legitimate delivery service that somehow got their information, or something more sinister. She couldn't take the risk. Maya called her supervisor at the school. "I need to come in early today. Family emergency. I need to be there when my son has lunch." "That's fine, Maya. Everything okay?" "Just being cautious." She arrived at Jefferson Middle School at 11 a.m., 2 hours before the supposed delivery. She positioned herself in the cafeteria where she could watch all the entrances while appearing to work. Lunch period started at 11:30. Diego came through the line, spotted her, and looked confused but didn't approach. Good, she'd taught him to trust her instincts even when he didn't understand. At 12:45, 15 minutes before the supposed delivery, Maya saw him. A man in a delivery uniform entered the school's main office. Nothing unusual about that. Delivery people came through all the time. But Maya noticed things others wouldn't. The way he scanned the hallways, the positioning of his body that suggested military training, the slight bulge under his jacket that could be a concealed weapon. Maya moved quickly, positioning herself outside the office but within line of sight. The man was talking to the receptionist, showing some kind of paperwork. "Package for Diego Rodriguez. Needs to be signed for by a parent or guardian." The receptionist looked uncertain. "We don't typically allow deliveries directly to students. Can you leave it with me?" "Signature required. Is there a way to contact the parent?" Maya made a decision. She walked into the office, still wearing her custodial uniform, carrying her cleaning supplies. "I'm Diego's mother," she said. "I can sign for it." The delivery man turned, and Maya saw recognition flicker in his eyes. Not immediate, but a sense of familiarity that made her blood run cold. "Mrs. Rodriguez?" he asked, pulling out a tablet. "I'll need to see ID." "I don't carry ID while working, but I'm his mother. What's the package?" "I'm not at liberty to say, ma'am. Company policy. I'll need ID to complete the delivery." They were at an impasse. If Maya showed ID, it would confirm her identity. If she didn't, the man would leave, but might come back, might approach Diego directly. "Tell you what," Maya said, her voice taking on the tone of command she hadn't used in 3 years. "Why don't you tell me which company you work for, and I'll verify this delivery through their customer service? Because I didn't order anything, and I'm very curious how you got my son's name." The man's expression shifted slightly, still professional but wary. "Of course, ma'am, I'm with Atlas Delivery Services," the sender requested. "Atlas doesn't exist," Maya interrupted. "I know every major delivery company in this region, and Atlas isn't one of them. So I'll ask you again very clearly, who sent you and what do you want with my son?" The school receptionist was now paying full attention, her hand moving toward the phone to call security. The delivery man raised his hands in a placating gesture. "Mrs. Rodriguez, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm going to leave now. Have a good day." He walked out quickly, and Maya followed at a distance, watching as he got into an unmarked white van and drove away. She memorized the license plate, noted the direction he headed. Back in the office, the receptionist looked shaken. "Should I call the police?" "No," Maya said. "It was probably just a miscommunication. But if anyone else comes asking about Diego, don't give them any information and call me immediately." Maya finished her shift in a state of high alert, watching every person who entered the building, nodding every car in the parking lot. When school ended, she personally walked Diego to Mrs. Chen's apartment instead of letting him go alone. "Mom, what's going on?" Diego asked as they walked. "You're acting weird." "Just being careful, Mijo. Remember what I taught you about situational awareness?" "Yeah, notice people following you, trust your instincts, have an exit plan." "Good, I want you to be extra vigilant for the next few days. If anyone approaches you, anyone at all who you don't know, you run and call me immediately. Understand?" Diego's face paled. "Are we in danger? Do we need to move again?" The fear in his voice broke Maya's heart. This was exactly what she'd been trying to avoid, teaching her son to live in constant fear. I don't know yet, she admitted, but I'm going to find out. That night, instead of going to her cleaning job, Maya called in sick. She needed time to think, to plan, to figure out who had found them and what they wanted. She pulled out her old encrypted phone, the one she'd kept charged but hadn't used in 3 years. There was one person who might be able to help, one person from her old life who she'd trusted completely. Commander Jennifer Chen had been Maya's best friend in the Navy, had served with her on multiple operations, had been one of the few people who believed Maya's suspicions about Carlos's death. They'd lost touch when Maya disappeared, but Chen had given her an emergency contact number. Maya sent a text to that number. Ghost to Phoenix. Need eyes on a situation. Package delivery to my son's school. Atlas Delivery Services, license plate BVX7429. Can you verify? She didn't expect an immediate response, but 5 minutes later her phone buzzed. Phoenix to Ghost. Holy shit, you're alive, stand by, checking now. 20 minutes later, another message. License plate registered to Naval Criminal Investigative Service. Maya, what the hell is going on? Maya's blood ran cold. NCIS. That meant this wasn't random, wasn't just paranoia. Someone official was looking for her. The question was, were they friend or foe? She typed back, long story, need to know if this is hostile. Can you find out who ordered the approach? Working on it. But Maya, if NCIS is looking for you, staying hidden isn't going to work much longer. Maybe it's time to come in from the cold. Can't risk Diego's safety, not until I know what this is about. Understood, give me 24 hours. We'll contact when I have intel. Maya spent that night wide awake, sitting by the window, watching the street. Every car that passed made her tense. Every sound brought her hand to the knife she'd retrieved from the box of memories. She'd spent 3 years hiding, convincing herself it was the only way to keep Diego safe. But if NCIS had found her, if they were approaching Diego at school, then hiding wasn't working anymore. Maybe it was time to stop running and start fighting. But fighting meant exposure. Fighting meant Diego would learn the truth about who his mother really was. Fighting meant risking the very safety she'd sacrificed everything to maintain. As dawn broke over their small apartment, Maya made a decision. She wouldn't run this time. She'd find out what NCIS wanted, why they'd found her after 3 years, and whether the threats that had driven her underground were still active. And if those threats still existed, if the people who'd killed Carlos were still out there. Well, Steel Cobra had never backed down from a fight before. 3 years of hiding had dulled her edge, but it hadn't broken her. The operator was still there, under the custodian's uniform. It was time to remember who she really was. Maya didn't sleep. She sat at their small kitchen table with her encrypted phone, her old tactical notebook, and a growing sense that 3 years of carefully maintained anonymity were about to shatter. At 6 a.m., Diego emerged from the bedroom, took one look at her face, and immediately understood something was wrong. We're not moving again, are we? His voice carried the weary resignation of a child who'd learned not to get attached to places. I hope not, Mijo, but I need you to stay home from school today, call in sick. Mom, not up for debate. I need to handle something and I need to know you're safe with Mrs. Chen. Can you do that for me? Diego studied her face, then nodded slowly. This is about the delivery guy yesterday, isn't it? Yes, and I need to find out what he wanted before I let you go anywhere. After settling Diego with Mrs. Chen and swearing the elderly woman to secrecy about his presence, Maya drove to a location she'd scouted years ago but never used, an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. It was private, defensible, and had multiple exits. Perfect for a meeting she didn't entirely trust. She texted Commander Chen, need secure meet. Today, I'll send location in 2 hours, come alone. The response was immediate. Roger, will advise when en route. Maya spent those 2 hours preparing the meeting site, checking sight lines, identifying escape routes, ensuring she'd have every tactical advantage if this went wrong. Old skills came flooding back, muscle memory from thousands of hours of training. At 10 a.m., she sent the location coordinates and settled in to wait, positioned where she could see anyone approaching but remain concealed. Commander Jennifer Chen arrived at 10:40 in an unmarked civilian car. She was alone, as requested, dressed in jeans and a jacket. But Maya noticed the slight bulge that indicated she was armed. Maya stepped out from cover. "Hello, Phoenix." Chen spun, hand moving toward her weapon, then froze when she recognized Maya. "Jesus, Ghost, you look different." "That was the idea," Maya gestured to the warehouse. "Inside, we need to talk." Once they were settled in a room with clear sight lines, Chen pulled out her phone and showed Maya a photograph. "This is Lieutenant Commander Nathan Reeves. He's with NCIS, assigned to a cold case unit that reopened investigation into your husband's death 6 months ago." Maya's heart rate spiked. "What?" New evidence came to light. An anonymous tip about falsified maintenance records for the equipment that failed during Carlos's training exercise. Someone sent NCIS a whole package of documents suggesting his death wasn't accidental. Who sent it? That's the thing nobody knows. It was dropped off at NCIS headquarters in an unmarked envelope, no return address, no identifying information. But the documents were legitimate, showed clear evidence of tampering with equipment logs. Maya processed this information rapidly. So NCIS reopened the investigation, started looking into Carlos's death, and somehow that led them to me. They're looking for you because they want your testimony. Maya, you were asking questions 3 years ago, making accusations. Then you suddenly resigned and disappeared. That looks suspicious. It looks like I was being threatened and chose to protect my son. I know that, you know that, but NCIS doesn't. They think you might have relevant information or that you might be in danger or both. Chen leaned forward. Reeves is a good investigator. He's not part of whatever conspiracy killed Carlos. He genuinely wants to find the truth. How do you know that? Because I've been working with him for the past month. As soon as I heard they were investigating Carlos's death, I reached out, told him I'd served with both of you, that I might be able to help. Maya felt betrayed. You told them about me. No, I told them about Carlos, about the operations we ran, about the excellence of his service record. But Maya, they're going to find you eventually. NCIS is good at what they do. The question is whether you want to control that encounter or have it forced on you. Like having an agent approach my son at his school. Chen winced. That wasn't supposed to happen that way. Reeves wanted to make contact through official channels, but his supervisor overruled him. Said they needed to verify your identity before making formal approach. By threatening my son. By delivering a subpoena. Maya, you're a material witness in a potential murder investigation. They can compel your testimony. Maya stood, packing the warehouse floor. 3 years of hiding, of sacrifice, of teaching her son to be afraid. And now it was all unraveling because someone had sent documents to NCIS. Who would do that? Who had access to maintenance records from 3 years ago? Who would care enough to reopen the investigation? I need to talk to Reeves, Maya said finally. But on my terms, in a location I choose, and only after I've verified he's legitimate. Done, I can set that up. But Maya, there's something else you should know. Chen pulled out another document. The investigation isn't just about Carlos anymore. They've uncovered evidence of a broader pattern, multiple deaths over the past 5 years, all ruled accidental or natural causes, all involving special operations personnel who'd been investigating or questioning certain operations. Maya felt ice in her veins. How many? 7 that they've identified so far. Carlos was the 4th. They think there might be more. Who's behind it? That's what they're trying to figure out. But Maya, whoever it is, has enough power to falsify official reports, to make investigators look the other way, to make witnesses disappear. You weren't paranoid 3 years ago. You were right to be scared. The validation should have felt good, but it just made Maya angrier. She'd given up everything, her career, her identity, her sense of self, to keep Diego safe, and she'd been right to do so. But now the people who'd forced her into hiding were being investigated. Now there might finally be a chance at justice. Set up the meeting with Reeves, Maya said. Tomorrow, same location, 10 a.m., and Chen, if this is a trap, if you've compromised me. It's not a trap. I swear on everything we've been through together. This is real. This is your chance to fight back. After Chen left, Maya remained at the warehouse, thinking through scenarios and probabilities. She needed to verify Chen's information independently before trusting it. But how? She'd been out of the intelligence loop for 3 years, had no access to military networks, no way to confirm what Chen had told her. Or did she? Maya pulled out her phone and made a call to a number she'd memorized. but never used. A former teammate who'd left the service and started a private security consulting firm. Atlas Security, this is Hendricks. Sean, it's Ghost. Silence on the other end. Then, holy shit, I thought you were dead. Close enough, I need a favor. Discreet information gathering, no questions asked, paid in cash. What do you need? NCIS investigation into Carlos Rodriguez's death. I need to know if it's real, who's running it, what they've found, and most importantly, whether it's compromised. That's going to take some work. Give me 48 hours. I have 24. Maya. 24 hours, Sean. I have a 13-year-old son whose safety depends on me knowing whether I can trust NCIS. Can you do it or not? I can do it, but Ghost, if you're coming back, you should know things have changed. Word on the street is someone's cleaning house, getting nervous about old operations being exposed. People who ask too many questions are having accidents. You need to be careful. I've been careful for 3 years. Now I need to be smart. After ending the call, Maya returned to her apartment to check on Diego. Mrs. Chen reported that he'd been quiet, doing homework but clearly worried. Maya thanked her and found Diego sitting at the kitchen table with his algebra textbook. Can I go to school tomorrow? He asked without looking up. Maybe, depends on what I learned today. Mom, I need to know what's going on. I'm 13, not stupid. Someone's looking for us, aren't they? Maya sat down across from him. Yes, people from my old job, they want to talk to me about your father's death. Diego's head snapped up. The people who killed him. No, people who are investigating how he died. There's a difference. Are we in danger? I don't know yet, but Diego, I need you to understand something. If I meet with these people, if I give testimony about what happened to your dad, our lives are going to change. We won't be able to hide anymore. People will know who we are, where we are. That could be dangerous, but it's also the only way to get justice for your father. Diego was quiet for a long moment. Then, I want justice for Dad, even if it's scary. The next morning, Maya arrived at the warehouse 2 hours early. She'd brought equipment she'd kept stored at a secure location, tactical gear, communications equipment, and her service weapon that she'd never actually disposed of despite having turned in her official sidearm. If this was a trap, she'd at least go down fighting. At 9:50 a.m., Commander Chen arrived with a man in his mid-40s, trim build, alert eyes, the bearing of someone with military experience. Lieutenant Commander Nathan Reeves. Maya watched from concealment as they entered the warehouse. Chen scanned the space, spotted the position where Maya should be, and raised her hands to show she was unarmed. Ghost, we're here, just like we arranged. This is Lieutenant Commander Reeves from NCIS. He's here to talk, nothing more. Maya stepped out, weapon holstered but accessible. Commander Reeves, forgive me if I don't trust NCIS after one of your agents approached my son at his school. Reeves had the grace to look embarrassed. That was my supervisor's call, not mine. I objected strenuously. I don't use family members to pressure witnesses. But your supervisor does. My supervisor is old school. He believed establishing positive ID was worth the intrusion. I disagreed, and I've filed a formal complaint about his methods. Maya studied him, looking for signs of deception. She'd been trained to read people, to spot tells. Reeves seemed genuine, uncomfortable about the school incident, but not defensive or hostile. Commander Chen says you're investigating my husband's death, Maya said. Why now? Why after 3 years? Because someone sent us evidence that couldn't be ignored. Reeves pulled out a tablet, showed Maya photographs of documents. These are maintenance logs for the equipment that failed during your husband's training exercise. The originals show routine maintenance, no issues. But these copies, which were somehow obtained from a secure archive, show that someone altered the digital records after Captain Rodriguez's death. Maya examined the documents carefully. They matched what she'd suspected 3 years ago but hadn't been able to prove. Who gave you these? We don't know. They were delivered anonymously. But the forensics team verified they're authentic, not fabricated. Someone with high-level access pulled these from an archive that's supposed to be tamper-proof. Which means someone on the inside wants this investigation to happen, Maya said. Someone who knows what really happened and wants it exposed. That's our theory, and that someone might be in danger for coming forward. Reeves put away the tablet. Commander Rodriguez, I need your testimony about what you observed 3 years ago. What questions you were asking, what threats you received, why you went into hiding. Your information could be crucial to identifying who's behind this. And if I testify, what protection do you offer? For me and my son. Full protective custody if needed. Relocation, new identities, the works. NCIS takes protection of witnesses seriously. Like you took approaching my son seriously. Reeves didn't flinch. That was a mistake. I've acknowledged that. But Commander, you have a choice to make. You can keep hiding, keep living in fear, keep teaching your son that the people who killed his father get to win. Or you can fight back, help us catch them, make sure your husband's death means something. The words hit hard because they were true. Maya had been hiding for 3 years, calling it protection. But protection from what? If NCIS was investigating, if someone with inside access was providing evidence, then the conspiracy was already being exposed. Maybe hiding wasn't the safest option anymore. Maybe the safest thing was to help destroy the threat completely. I'll testify, Maya said, but on conditions. 1, my son stays out of it completely until the investigation is concluded. 2, I get regular updates on the investigation's progress. 3, if at any point I feel the security is compromised, I pull my testimony and disappear again. And 4, I want to know who else is investigating this. You mentioned 7 deaths. Who are the other investigators, and are they trustworthy? Agreed to all conditions, Reeves said without hesitation. The investigation team is small. Myself, Commander Chen, 2 analysts, and my supervisor who you've already expressed concerns about. We're operating semi-independently because we're not sure how high the corruption goes. Smart corruption at this level usually involves senior leadership. Maya made a decision. I have contacts who might be able to provide additional information. Former teammates, people who served with Carlos. If I reach out to them, can you protect them too? Absolutely. Any witness who comes forward gets full protection. They spent the next 3 hours going over everything Maya had observed 3 years ago. The inconsistencies in Carlos's death report, the suspicious maintenance failures, the witnesses who'd seen things that didn't match the official story, the threats that had driven her underground. Reeves recorded everything, asked detailed questions, built a comprehensive timeline. By the time they finished, the sun was setting and Maya felt both exhausted and oddly relieved. She'd spent 3 years carrying these secrets alone. Now someone official was listening, taking her seriously, building a case. What happens next? Maya asked. We verify your testimony against other evidence, identify suspects, and build a case for formal charges. It's going to take time. Investigations like this don't move quickly. How much time? Months, probably. Maybe longer if the suspects are senior officers with resources to fight back. Maya nodded. Then I'll need that protective custody for Diego. I don't want him at risk while this plays out. Absolutely. I can have marshals in place by tomorrow. No, Maya's voice was firm. I'll handle Diego's security myself. Just give me the resources I need. Secure housing, surveillance equipment, emergency protocols. I trust my own skills more than anyone else's. Reeves looked like he wanted to argue, but Chen cut in. Let her do it her way. Trust me, Ghost security protocols are probably better than ours. After Reeves left, Chen stayed behind. You did the right thing, Maya, coming forward, agreeing to testify. Did I, or did I just paint a target on Diego's back? You painted a target on the people who killed Carlos. That's different. Maya wasn't sure it was, but she appreciated the attempt at reassurance. That night, she sat down with Diego and explained what was happening. He listened with the same serious expression he'd inherited from his father, asking intelligent questions and processing information with remarkable maturity. So we're going to be in hiding, but like official hiding this time? He asked. Something like that. NCIS will provide a safe location, security monitoring, but I'll be the one actually keeping us safe. Will I have to change schools again? Probably. I'm sorry, Mijo. Diego was quiet for a moment. It's worth it if it means catching the people who killed Dad. Maya pulled him close. When did you get so brave? I learned from my parents. They were both warriors, right? The question made Maya's throat tight. Yeah, baby, we were. Over the next week, Maya worked with Reeves to relocate them to a NCIS safe house in a different town. It was a significant upgrade from their apartment. 3 bedrooms, full security system, even a small yard. Diego enrolled in a new school under a different name, with a cover story about his mother working for the government in a classified capacity. For the first time in 3 years, Maya could be partially honest about who she was. Not fully. She was still officially Maya Rodriguez, former logistics officer, not Lieutenant Commander Maya Steel Cobra Rodriguez, elite special operations officer. But it was closer to the truth than she'd been allowed to live for a long time. She also started working with Reeves's investigation team, providing detailed analysis of Carlos's death and the suspicious patterns surrounding it. Her tactical expertise proved invaluable. She could spot operational flaws and cover-up attempts that civilian investigators might miss. "You should be doing this full-time," Reeves commented during one session. "You're better at this than half my team." "I used to be better at this than your whole team," Maya corrected without ego. "I was an intelligence officer before I became an operator. Pattern recognition, tactical analysis, that was my specialty. Ever think about coming back? The Navy would probably reinstate your commission if you wanted." "Not while Diego's still young. He needs stability more than I need to be in uniform." But the truth was, being back in the game, even just at the analysis level, felt good. For 3 years, Maya had suppressed the part of herself that was Steel Cobra, the warrior and tactician. Now that side was waking up, and she remembered why she'd loved this work. She was good at it, better than good, exceptional. And maybe, just maybe, she could use those skills to finally get justice for Carlos. A month into the investigation, Reeves called an emergency meeting. Maya left Diego with trusted protection and drove to the NCIS field office. Reeves looked grim. "We've identified our primary suspect, Rear Admiral Marcus Thornton, currently assigned to Special Operations Command. He was Carlos's commanding officer at the time of death, had access to maintenance records, and financial analysis shows suspicious deposits to offshore accounts that coincide with the deaths we're investigating." Maya felt her blood run cold. Thornton. She knew that name, had met the man at several official functions. Smooth, political, the kind of officer who advanced through connections rather than competence. "Can you prove it?" "We're building the case. But Maya, there's a problem. Thornton has powerful allies. If word gets out that we're investigating him, he could destroy evidence or disappear. We need to move carefully." "How carefully?" "We're seeking approval for electronic surveillance, financial audits, the works. But it's going to take time to get all the authorizations we need." "How much time?" "Weeks, maybe months." Maya shook her head. "That's too long. If Thornton suspects he's being investigated, he'll eliminate evidence and witnesses. We need to move faster." "We can't move faster without compromising the investigation." "Then maybe it's time to think outside official channels." Maya pulled out her phone. "I know people who can gather intelligence without warrants or authorization, people who owe me favors." Reeves looked uncomfortable. "I can't officially sanction that." "You don't have to. In fact, you shouldn't know anything about it. But if I happen to acquire information through unofficial means, and if that information happened to point you toward evidence you could legally obtain." "That's a gray area." "Justice lives in gray areas," Maya said. "Carlos taught me that." The decision to operate outside official channels came naturally to Maya, but explaining it to Diego was harder. At 13, her son was old enough to understand complexity, but young enough to still believe in clear rules and simple justice. "So you're going to break the law to catch the people who killed Dad?" Diego asked that evening, sitting across from her at the safe house kitchen table. "I'm going to gather information that NCIS can't legally obtain. There's a difference." "Is there? Mom, you've always told me rules matter, that there are consequences for breaking them." Maya set down the tactical planning notes she'd been reviewing. "You're right. Rules do matter. But sometimes the people who make the rules use them to protect themselves while hurting others. Your father died because someone broke fundamental rules. They committed murder and then used their authority to cover it up. Following normal procedures to expose that crime could take years, and in that time the evidence might disappear and more people might die." "So you're saying the ends justify the means?" "I'm saying that when the system is corrupted, sometimes you have to work outside the system to fix it. But Diego, I want you to understand something important. What I'm about to do is dangerous, not just physically, but legally. If I get caught doing this without authorization, I could face criminal charges. I'm willing to take that risk because getting justice for your father matters more to me than my own safety. But you need to know that what I'm doing isn't heroic or clean. It's just necessary." Diego thought about that for a long moment. "Will you be safe?" "I'll be as safe as I know how to be, but I can't promise nothing will go wrong." "Then I want to help." "Absolutely not." "Mom, I'm good with computers, better than you, if you need someone to." "No," Maya's voice was firm. "Diego, you're 13 years old. I've already had to upend your life multiple times to keep you safe. I'm not pulling you into something illegal and dangerous. You stay here, you go to school, you act normal. That's how you help." He looked frustrated but nodded. "Fine, but Mom, please be careful, I can't lose you too." The next morning, after ensuring Diego was safely at school with security monitoring, Maya drove 3 hours to meet Sean Hendricks at his private security firm. She'd worked with Sean during her active duty days. He'd been a Navy SEAL, exceptionally skilled at reconnaissance and information gathering, who'd left the service to start a company that did private military contracting and security consulting. Hendricks' security occupied a nondescript building in an industrial park. Sean met her in a conference room, looking older than she remembered but still fit and alert. "Ghost, still can't believe you're alive, we all thought," he trailed off. "You thought I was dead or you thought I'd been disappeared. Either way, close enough." Maya pulled out a folder containing everything she'd compiled on Rear Admiral Thornton. "I need intel on this man. Financial records, communication logs, travel history, known associates, everything you can find." Sean flipped through the folder. "This is a Rear Admiral, Maya, going after someone at that level. He killed Carlos, him or people working for him. He's also responsible for at least 6 other deaths that we know about." "Can you prove it?" "Not yet, that's why I need your help." Sean was quiet for a moment, studying the documents. "This is going to be expensive and risky. If Thornton has the kind of resources you're suggesting, he'll have security, counter-surveillance, the works." "I can pay. I've been saving for 3 years." Maya pulled out an envelope containing $20,000 in cash, everything she'd managed to scrape together. "That's a down payment. Get me what I need, and there's more when the job's done." "Maya, I'd do this for free for you and Carlos, but I have employees, expenses, this kind of work will require significant resources. I know. That's why I'm paying you what it's worth." They spent the next 2 hours planning the operation. Sean had a network of former military intelligence personnel, hackers, and private investigators who could gather information without leaving official traces. Within 2 weeks, he estimated they'd have a comprehensive profile of Thornton's activities, vulnerabilities, and potential evidence of wrongdoing. "But Ghost," Sean said as Maya was leaving, "if you're planning what I think you're planning, you need to be ready for this to get ugly. Rear admirals don't go down without a fight. They have resources, connections, and legal protection. Even with solid evidence, actually getting Thornton prosecuted could be nearly impossible." "Then I'll make it impossible for him to escape prosecution," Maya said, "one way or another." The next 2 weeks were a careful balance of maintaining normalcy for Diego while secretly coordinating with Sean's team. Maya attended parent-teacher conferences, helped with homework, made lunches, and ensured her son felt secure and cared for. But late at night, after Diego was asleep, she studied the intelligence reports Sean sent her. Financial transactions that showed Thornton receiving payments from foreign accounts. Communication records showing he'd been in contact with known intelligence brokers. Travel logs that placed him at locations where other suspicious deaths occurred. The pattern was damning, but it wasn't proof, not the kind that would hold up in court. Maya also continued working with Reeves's official investigation, careful not to reveal where her private intelligence was coming from. She'd learned to parse her contributions, pointing investigators toward leads without explaining how she'd identified them. "Your instincts are remarkable," Reeves commented during one session. "You have a gift for knowing where to look." "I have good sources," Maya corrected, "and 3 years of obsessing over this case." The break came on a Tuesday evening. Sean called her personal phone, the encrypted one, not the one NCIS monitored. "Ghost, we found something. Thornton's been sloppy about his communications. He's been using encrypted messaging apps, but he made a mistake, accessed them from his personal device while connected to an unsecured Wi-Fi network at a hotel. We intercepted the traffic." Maya's pulse quickened. What did you find? Conversations with at least 3 other senior officers about operational security concerns. That's code for cleaning up witnesses and evidence. Maya, he's planning another elimination. There's a former SEAL named Bradley Marcus who apparently approached NCIS with information about the equipment tampering. Thornton knows about it, and he's planning to address the liability. When? This weekend. Marcus lives alone in Colorado Springs. The plan is to make it look like a home invasion gone wrong. Maya's tactical mind immediately began calculating options. She could warn Reeves, let NCIS handle it officially. But that would reveal her private intelligence operation and potentially compromise the investigation. Or she could handle it herself, get to Marcus first, provide protection, and gather evidence directly from someone who'd witnessed the corruption. Send me everything you have on Marcus and Thornton's plan, Maya said. And Sean, I'm going to need tactical equipment, the kind I used to use in the field. Ghost, what are you planning? I'm planning to save a witness and catch a would-be murderer in the act. You in? There was a pause. Hell yes, I'm in. Send me the coordinates and I'll have a team ready. Maya spent the next day making arrangements. She told Reeves she needed to follow up on a lead and would be out of communication for 48 hours. She left Diego with protection officers, giving him a cover story about a college visit she was checking out. Then she drove to Colorado Springs. Bradley Marcus lived in a modest house on the edge of town, set back from the road with good visibility but multiple approaches. Maya established surveillance from a rented vehicle 2 blocks away, watching the house and the surrounding area. Sean's team joined her just after sunset, 3 former Special Operations personnel, equipped with surveillance gear, weapons, and protective equipment. Intel says the hit team will arrive sometime between midnight and 0300, Sean briefed. 2 professionals, probably contracted through cutouts so they can't be traced back to Thornton. They'll make entry through the rear door, execute Marcus, stage a burglary, and be gone in under 5 minutes. Unless we stop them, Maya said. Here's the plan. I'll approach Marcus now, warn him, and establish defensive positions inside the house. You and your team maintain perimeter security and coordinate with local police to be ready for rapid response when the shooters arrive. Why not just extract Marcus and get him to safety? Because I want to catch these people in the act. Get them on camera attempting murder. That's evidence Thornton can't explain away. Sean looked concerned. That's risky if something goes wrong. Nothing will go wrong. I've done this before. Maya approached Marcus's house at 2100 hours, moving carefully and watching for surveillance. She knocked on the door, standing where the security camera would show her clearly. A man in his 50s answered, military bearing evident despite civilian clothes. Can I help you? Mr. Marcus, my name is Maya Rodriguez. You knew my husband, Carlos Rodriguez. He died 3 years ago in a training accident that wasn't an accident. I believe you have information about what really happened, and I believe you're in danger because of it. Marcus's face went pale. How did you? I've been investigating his death. So has NCIS. But there's a problem. The people responsible know you talked to investigators and they're coming for you tonight. We can protect you, but we need to move quickly. Marcus hesitated for just a moment, then stepped aside. Come in. Inside, Maya quickly explained the situation while Sean's team established defensive positions around the property. Marcus listened with the calm of someone who'd been in dangerous situations before. I should have known talking to NCIS would paint a target on me, he said. But I couldn't stay quiet after what I witnessed. Carlos was a good man. He deserved better than being murdered and having it covered up. Tell me what you saw. For the next hour, Marcus recounted his story. He'd been part of the maintenance team for the training exercise where Carlos died. He'd noticed irregularities in the equipment, subtle tampering that wouldn't be obvious unless you knew what to look for. When he'd reported it to his supervisor, he'd been told to forget what he saw, that it was classified, that asking questions would be bad for his career. He'd stayed quiet then, guilty but scared. But when NCIS started asking questions 6 months ago, he'd finally come forward with what he knew. I can identify the person who tampered with the equipment, Marcus said. Chief Petty Officer Daniel Morrison. He was taking orders from someone higher up, but he's the one who actually rigged the failure. Do you know who Morrison was taking orders from? I have suspicions, but no proof. Morrison's dead now, suicide, supposedly. Happened 2 months after Carlos died, convenient timing. Maya filed this information away. Another loose end, another witness eliminated. The conspiracy was more extensive than she'd realized. At midnight, Sean's surveillance equipment picked up movement, a vehicle approaching with its lights off, stopping 2 blocks away. "We have activity," Sean reported through the earpiece. 2 individuals, adult males, tactical gear. They're doing reconnaissance now. Maya positioned herself with Marcus in an interior room with no windows, both of them armed and ready. "Remember, we need them alive. Dead men can't testify." The next 15 minutes stretched like hours. Maya watched the security monitors as 2 figures moved around the property, checking for weaknesses, confirming Marcus was home. They were professionals, cautious, methodical, experienced. Finally, they made their move. One approached the back door while the other maintained overwatch position. Maya watched as the first man produced lockpicks and began working on the door. "Stand by," she whispered to her team. "Let them commit to entry." The lock clicked open. The door swung in slowly. The first shooter entered, weapon raised, moving with practiced efficiency. Maya let him get 3 steps inside before activating the lights and emerging from cover with her weapon trained on him. "Federal agent, don't move." It was a bluff. She wasn't actually a federal agent, but it worked. The shooter froze, caught completely off guard. Outside, Sean's team had moved on the second shooter, taking him down with non-lethal force. Within 2 minutes, both intruders were secured, disarmed, and flexicuffed. Maya photographed everything: their faces, their weapons, their tactical gear, the lockpicks and entry tools. "Colorado Springs PD is en route," Sean reported. "ETA 3 minutes." Maya approached the shooter she detained, pulling off his balaclava to reveal a face she didn't recognize. "Who hired you?" The man said nothing, just stared at her with cold, professional assessment. "Let me be clear about your situation," Maya said. "You just attempted to break into a federal witness's home with intent to commit murder. That's multiple felonies. You're going to prison for a very long time. Your only hope of reducing that sentence is cooperation. So I'll ask again, who hired you?" Still nothing. Maya shrugged. "Your choice, but understand this. The people who hired you are going to let you take the fall. They're going to deny any connection to you. You'll spend the rest of your life in prison while they walk free. Is that loyalty worth it?" She saw something flicker in his eyes. Doubt, maybe, or calculation. Before he could respond, police sirens approached. Maya quickly briefed the responding officers, showing her NCIS credentials, technically Sean's, borrowed for the occasion, and explaining that these men had attempted to murder a federal witness. The shooters were arrested and taken into custody. Bradley Marcus gave a full statement to police and agreed to protective custody with NCIS. As dawn broke over Colorado Springs, Maya called Commander Reeves. "I have good news and bad news," she said. "Good news, I just prevented the murder of your witness, Bradley Marcus. Bad news, I did it without authorization and possibly compromised your investigation." Reeves was silent for a long moment. "Where are you?" "Colorado Springs, with Marcus, and with 2 hired killers who were sent to eliminate him." "Jesus Christ, Maya, do you have any idea what you've done?" "I've saved a witness and gathered evidence. The killers might talk, might lead us directly to Thornton. Or they might lawyer up and refuse to say anything, and the evidence will be inadmissible because you obtained it through illegal surveillance. Then we make sure it doesn't get to trial. We use this to pressure Thornton, make him reveal himself." Reeves's voice was tight with frustration. "That's not how this works. We follow procedure, we build a case, we go through proper channels." "Your proper channels were about to get Marcus killed. I prevented that. You're welcome." "Maya, I can't protect you if you keep doing things like this. You're not a federal agent. You don't have arrest authority. What you did last night was illegal." "Then don't protect me. Just get justice for Carlos and the others. That's all I care about." She ended the call and turned to find Sean watching her with a mixture of concern and admiration. "You know you just burned your relationship with NCIS, right?" he said. "Probably, but I got what we needed, evidence that Thornton's actively eliminating witnesses. That's worth burning a few bridges." Over the next 48 hours, the situation evolved rapidly. The 2 shooters, facing overwhelming evidence and lengthy prison sentences, cut deals with prosecutors. They confirmed they'd been hired through an intermediary to eliminate Bradley Marcus. They provided communication records, payment trails, and enough information to trace the contract back through several layers of cutouts. But the trail stopped before reaching Thornton directly. He'd insulated himself too well, used too many intermediaries. They had strong circumstantial evidence but not proof beyond reasonable doubt. Maya met with Reeves at a neutral location, a coffee shop in Virginia where they could talk without official record. The shooter's testimony isn't enough, Reeves explained. Defense attorneys will argue they're unreliable witnesses trying to reduce their sentences. We need something more direct. What about the communications intercepts? Maya asked. Inadmissible, obtained through illegal surveillance. So we're stuck. Unless, Reeves looked uncomfortable. Unless we can get Thornton to incriminate himself, wear a wire, get him talking, catch him admitting to something prosecutable. Who would wear the wire? None of your current witnesses have access to Thornton at that level. Reeves met her eyes. You do. You're a former officer who served under him. You could request a meeting, say you have information you want to share, get him talking. Maya immediately understood the danger. If Thornton suspected she was recording, she'd be in immediate physical danger. And if he was as ruthless as the evidence suggested, he might try to eliminate her on the spot. That's asking me to make myself bait, she said. Yes, and I can't officially ask you to do it. But Maya, it might be our only shot at getting the evidence we need. Maya thought about Diego, about the promise she'd made to be careful. Then she thought about Carlos, about justice delayed, about teaching her son that some things were worth fighting for. I'll do it, she said. But on my terms, I pick the location, I control the security, and I have backup in place that I trust. Agreed. Over the next week, Maya prepared for the most dangerous operation of her life. She reached out to Thornton through official channels, requesting a meeting to discuss her husband's death and information she'd recently learned. She suggested a location, a restaurant in Norfolk, public enough to seem safe but private enough to have a real conversation. Thornton agreed to meet, which both encouraged and worried her. Either he genuinely didn't see her as a threat, or he was confident he could eliminate her if needed. Maya spent those days putting her affairs in order, updating her will, writing letters to Diego in case something went wrong, ensuring he'd be cared for. She also spent time with her son, memorizing details she might never get to see again. You're acting weird, Mom, Diego said one evening, like you're saying goodbye. I'm not saying goodbye, I'm just appreciating what we have. You're about to do something dangerous, aren't you? Maya met his eyes. Yes, but it's necessary. For Dad, and for all the other families this person has hurt. Diego hugged her fiercely. Come back, Mom, please. I will, Mijo, I promise. The meeting was set for a Saturday evening. Maya arrived early, as did Sean's security team positioned at strategic points around the restaurant. She was wearing a wire, sophisticated equipment borrowed from NCIS that would record everything Thornton said. Rear Admiral Marcus Thornton arrived exactly on time, dressed in civilian clothes but still carrying himself with military bearing. He was in his 50s, silver hair, the kind of polished appearance that came from decades of practice at military politics. Commander Rodriguez, he greeted, shaking her hand. It's been a long time. I was surprised to receive your message. Thank you for meeting with me, sir, Maya gestured to the table. I know this is unusual. They ordered drinks and made small talk while Maya waited for the right moment. She needed him relaxed, needed him to think this was a friendly conversation where he held all the power. So, Thornton said eventually, you mentioned having information about your husband's death. I was very sorry to hear about Carlos. He was an exceptional officer. He was investigating something when he died, Maya said carefully. Equipment tampering, maintenance fraud. He believed someone was deliberately sabotaging operations. Thornton's expression showed concern, but his eyes remained calculating. Carlos was always thorough, perhaps too thorough sometimes. In our business, asking too many questions can be dangerous. Dangerous how? Let's just say that not everyone appreciates having their activities scrutinized. There are operations that need to remain classified, methods that can't be questioned. Maya leaned forward. Are you saying my husband died because he was asking questions someone didn't want answered? I'm saying that military operations are complex. Sometimes accidents happen and the timing seems suspicious, but that doesn't mean there was foul play. What if there was proof? What if someone could demonstrate that Carlos's death wasn't an accident but was orchestrated? Thornton set down his drink, studying her. Then that person would be making a very serious accusation, one that would need substantial evidence to support. Accusations against senior officers can be career-ending for the person making them, regardless of whether they're true. Is that a threat, sir? It's a reality. Maya, you've been through a traumatic experience. Losing a spouse, especially under questionable circumstances that can make people see conspiracies where there are none. My advice, both as Carlos's former commanding officer and as someone who cares about you and your son, is to let this go. Accept that his death was a tragedy but not a crime. Move forward with your life. And if I can't let it go? Thornton's expression hardened slightly. Then you'd be putting yourself and Diego at risk. There are people, not me, but people, who take operational security very seriously. People who have already demonstrated they're willing to protect classified information through extreme measures. You mean people like you? I mean people with resources, connections, and a lot to lose if certain activities are exposed. Thornton stood. This conversation is over. I came here hoping to help you find closure, but I see you're determined to pursue a dangerous path. I can't protect you from the consequences of that choice. He started to leave, and Maya realized she hadn't gotten enough. Nothing directly incriminating, just vague threats and implications. Admiral, she called, before you go, you should know that NCIS is building a case against you. They have financial records, communications intercepts, witness testimony. They know about the 7 deaths, about the equipment tampering, about the payments from foreign intelligence services. This conversation is being recorded, and everything you just said will be added to their evidence. Thornton froze. For a moment his polished facade cracked and Maya saw something cold and calculating beneath. You're bluffing, he said. Maya pulled out her phone and played back the last minute of their conversation, crystal clear audio of Thornton's veiled threats. I'm not bluffing, sir, and you just made your situation much worse. You threatened a federal witness, admitted knowledge of classified illegal activities, and essentially confirmed your involvement in a murder conspiracy. Thornton's hand moved toward his jacket, and Maya recognized the motion. He was reaching for a weapon. Don't, she said quietly. We're in a public restaurant, you're on camera, and I have backup positioned throughout this building. If you draw that weapon, you'll be shot before you can use it. For a tense moment, they stared at each other. Then Thornton slowly raised his hands. This isn't over, he said. Yes, sir, it is. You just lost. Security moved in then, both Sean's team and uniformed police officers who'd been standing by. Thornton was placed under arrest, read his rights, and led away in handcuffs. Maya sat at the table, her hands shaking with adrenaline, and called Commander Reeves. I got it, she said. Everything we need, he's under arrest. My God, Maya, you actually did it. We did it, justice for Carlos, finally. But even as she said the words, Maya knew this wasn't really over. Thornton's arrest was just the beginning. There would be trials, testimony, potential appeals. And Thornton had mentioned others, people with resources who might still see her as a threat. She drove home to the safe house, where Diego was waiting with the protective detail. Did it work? He asked as soon as she walked in. It worked. The person responsible for your father's death is under arrest. Diego hugged her fiercely. You did it, Mom. You actually did it. We did it, Maya corrected. Your dad started this investigation and I finished it. But Diego, this is his victory as much as ours. That night, for the first time in 3 years, Maya slept soundly, without nightmares, without the constant vigilance that had defined her life since going into hiding. Justice hadn't been easy or clean. It had required sacrifice, risk, and actions that lived in ethical gray areas. But Steel Cobra had completed her mission, and Carlos could finally rest in peace. Part 4. The arrest of Rear Admiral Marcus Thornton made national news within hours. By morning, Maya woke to find reporters camped outside the safe house, news helicopters circling overhead, and her phone flooded with interview requests. Mom, we're on TV, Diego said. staring at the screen where news anchors discussed. A stunning military corruption case involving multiple deaths and a conspiracy at the highest levels of Naval Special Warfare Command. Maya watched as her official service photo appeared on screen. Lieutenant Commander Maya Rodriguez in dress whites, pre-hiding, pre-trauma. The newscaster described her as a decorated special operations officer who spent 3 years in hiding after her husband's suspicious death, then emerged to help bring down the conspiracy responsible. "They make it sound like a movie," Diego observed. "It's going to feel like a movie for a while," Maya warned. "Media attention, interviews, probably people at school asking questions. How do you feel about that?" Diego thought for a moment. "I feel like people should know the truth, about Dad, about you, about what really happened." The next weeks were a blur of legal proceedings. Thornton's arrest triggered a cascade of additional investigations. The communications and financial records Maya's team had gathered led to 3 other senior officers being placed under investigation. A special prosecutor was appointed to handle the case, given its scope and the ranks involved. Commander Reeves asked Maya to serve as a consultant to the prosecution team, helping them understand the operational context of the evidence. She agreed, but only part-time. Diego still needed his mother present, still needed stability despite the chaos surrounding them. The day Thornton's preliminary hearing was held, the courthouse was packed with media, veterans groups, and families of the other victims. Maya sat in the gallery, watching as the Admiral she'd once served under was led in wearing prison orange instead of his uniform. The prosecution outlined their case, a conspiracy spanning 5 years, involving the murder of 7 service members who'd questioned or investigated questionable operations, all orchestrated to protect a network of officers selling classified information to foreign intelligence services. The amounts were staggering. The prosecution estimated Thornton and his co-conspirators had made over $15 million selling operational intelligence, tactical plans, and personnel information. That information had led to compromised missions, endangered American lives, and given hostile nations critical insights into U.S. capabilities. And when people started asking questions, officers like Carlos who noticed patterns and raised concerns, they were systematically eliminated. Thornton pleaded not guilty, his expensive defense team arguing that the evidence against him was circumstantial, that the recordings were obtained improperly, that their client was being scapegoated for systematic failures in operational security. But the prosecution was ready. They had financial records showing payments, communications showing coordination, and witness testimony from the hired killers who'd been caught trying to murder Bradley Marcus. They had equipment maintenance logs showing deliberate tampering, autopsy reports suggesting several natural deaths were actually poisonings, and most importantly, they had the recording of Thornton essentially admitting his involvement to Maya. The defense will argue this recording was obtained through entrapment, the prosecutor explained to Maya before the hearing. That you deliberately provoked Admiral Thornton into making incriminating statements. I asked questions. He chose to answer with threats and admissions. Exactly. And the jury will hear that recording and make their own judgment about who was entrapping whom. After the hearing, Maya was approached by a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and an official-looking badge. "Commander Rodriguez, I'm Special Agent Sarah Mitchell with the FBI. Could we talk privately?" They found an empty conference room, and Mitchell explained that the FBI was running a parallel investigation into the foreign intelligence aspect of the case, specifically which countries had been receiving classified information, and how extensive the damage was to national security. "We believe Admiral Thornton wasn't the top of this conspiracy, just a major player in it. There are others, possibly even more senior, who have been protected so far. Would you be willing to help us identify them?" Maya thought about Diego, about the promise she'd made to be done with this after catching Thornton. But she also thought about the other families, about service members still in danger from a conspiracy that hadn't been fully exposed. What would that involve? Analysis work primarily, reviewing operational patterns, identifying which missions showed signs of compromise, looking for connections between personnel movements and intelligence leaks. Your expertise in special operations makes you uniquely qualified for this work. How long? 6 months, maybe a year. It's a major investigation. But Commander, this could be the difference between dismantling the network completely or just cutting off one branch while the root remains. Maya requested time to think about it, then drove home to discuss it with Diego. Her son listened carefully as she explained the FBI's request. "So you'd be like hunting down more bad guys?" he asked. "More like connecting dots on paper. Less dangerous than what I've been doing, but still important." "Would we have to stay in the safe house?" "Probably not. The immediate threat, Thornton, is in custody. We could go back to normal life, or at least closer to it." "What do you want to do, Mom?" Maya appreciated that he was asking her preference rather than just accepting whatever she decided. "I want to finish what your dad started. He was investigating this corruption when he died. I feel like I owe it to him to see it through completely." "Then we should do it. Dad would want us to finish the mission." The phrase made Maya smile. Finish the mission was something Carlos had said often, his core belief that you didn't quit halfway through a job. "Okay," she decided. "I'll tell Agent Mitchell I'm in." Over the next 6 months, Maya worked with the FBI's counterintelligence division, analyzing years of operational data. She identified patterns that suggested which missions had been compromised, which deployments showed unusual casualty rates, which intelligence products seemed to have been leaked. The work was painstaking but rewarding. Every connection she made, every pattern she identified, brought them closer to understanding the full scope of the conspiracy. And her analysis led to results. 3 more senior officers were arrested. 2 defense contractors were charged with facilitating espionage. Even a civilian intelligence analyst at the CIA was implicated in passing classified information. The scope of the conspiracy was stunning. Not just Thornton and a few accomplices, but a network spanning multiple branches of the military and intelligence community, all united by greed and protected by their positions of authority. Diego adapted to their new life remarkably well. They moved out of the safe house into a regular apartment in the suburbs of Washington, D.C., close to where Maya was working with the FBI. He enrolled in a good school, started making friends, even joined the robotics club. But Maya noticed he'd changed. At 14, he was more serious, more aware of moral complexity. He asked hard questions about justice and compromise, about when it was okay to break rules and when it wasn't. "You broke laws to catch Thornton," he said one evening while they made dinner together. "But he broke laws too. What makes your law-breaking okay and his not?" "Intent and proportion," Maya answered. "Thornton broke laws to enrich himself at the cost of American lives. I broke laws to expose murder and espionage, and only after legal methods failed. The question isn't whether breaking laws is always wrong, it's whether the reason is justified and the harm is proportional to the good achieved. So sometimes the ends do justify the means. Sometimes, but you have to be really, really sure about your ends and really careful about your means. Thornton justified his crimes by saying he deserved to get paid more, that his service entitled him to extra benefits. That's selfish rationalization. I justified mine by saying innocent people would die if I didn't act. That's a higher standard, but it's still not perfect. I still broke laws, and I'll have to live with that." "Do you regret it?" Maya thought carefully. "I regret that it was necessary, but no, I don't regret doing it. Your father deserved justice, and the system wasn't providing it through legal channels." These conversations became regular parts of their evenings, Diego processing complex ethical questions, while Maya tried to be honest about the messy reality of seeking justice in a flawed system. 10 months after Thornton's arrest, the trial finally began. It was held in federal court in Virginia, with extensive security given the classified nature of much of the evidence. Maya was called as a key witness, testifying for 3 full days about Carlos's death, her investigation, and the evidence she'd gathered. The defense attorneys tried to paint her as a vengeful widow, driven by grief rather than facts, someone who'd constructed an elaborate conspiracy theory to explain a tragic accident. "Commander Rodriguez," Thornton's lead attorney asked during cross-examination, "isn't it true that you were diagnosed with PTSD after your husband's death?" "Yes, I was grieving the murder of my spouse. PTSD is a normal response to trauma." "And isn't it true that PTSD can include symptoms like paranoia, suspicious thinking, and difficulty distinguishing reality from perceived threats?" "Objection," the prosecutor said. "Relevance." Your Honor, I'm establishing that the witness's mental state may have affected her interpretation of events. The judge allowed the question, and Maya answered carefully. PTSD affected my mental health, yes, but it didn't affect my analytical abilities or my capacity to evaluate evidence objectively. The proof isn't in my mental state. It's in the financial records, communications, and physical evidence that corroborates everything I've testified to. But you admit you spent 3 years in hiding, living under a false identity, working menial jobs while convinced powerful people were trying to kill you. Does that sound like rational behavior? It sounds like the behavior of someone who'd received credible threats and chose to protect her child. And subsequent events proved I was right to be cautious. Admiral Thornton did send people to kill witnesses. Bradley Marcus would be dead if I hadn't intervened. The attorney tried several more angles, but Maya had been trained to resist interrogation and had spent months preparing for this testimony. She remained calm, factual, and consistent. The most powerful moment came when the prosecution played the recording of Maya's meeting with Thornton. The jury listened in silence as the Admiral essentially admitted to knowledge of criminal activities and threatened Maya for asking questions. "You're putting yourself and Diego at risk," Thornton's voice said clearly on the recording. "There are people who have already demonstrated they're willing to protect classified information through extreme measures." The prosecutor paused the recording. "Admiral Thornton, is that your voice?" "Yes, but taken out of context." "And when you say extreme measures, what are you referring to?" "I was speaking hypothetically." "Were you speaking hypothetically when you sent 2 hired killers to murder Bradley Marcus? When you arranged for equipment to be tampered with so Captain Rodriguez would die in a training accident? When you ordered 7 other deaths to protect your espionage operation?" "Objection," Thornton's attorney shouted. "Counsel is testifying rather than questioning." "Sustained," the judge said. "Rephrase, counselor." But the point had been made. The jury had heard Thornton's own words, his own threats, his own admissions. And they'd heard Maya's calm, measured responses, not a grief-crazed widow seeing conspiracies, but a trained intelligence officer systematically exposing the truth. The trial lasted 7 weeks. The prosecution called 43 witnesses, introduced hundreds of pieces of evidence, and methodically built a case that was overwhelming in its comprehensiveness. The defense tried to argue that Thornton had been poorly supervised, that he'd acted alone without higher approval, that the espionage charges were overstated. But the evidence spoke for itself. When the jury returned after 4 days of deliberation, Maya sat in the courtroom holding Diego's hand. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" the judge asked. "We have, Your Honors." "What say you?" "On the count of conspiracy to commit murder, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of espionage, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of obstructing justice." "Guilty, guilty, guilty." All charges, all counts. The jury had believed the evidence, believed the witnesses, believed that a rear admiral could betray everything he'd sworn to protect. Thornton sat motionless as the verdicts were read, his face ashen. When the judge asked if he had anything to say before sentencing was scheduled, he stood. "I served my country for 35 years, he said. "I risked my life, sacrificed for the mission, did things I can never speak about. I deserve better than this." The judge's expression was cold. "Admiral Thornton, you betrayed your country for money. You murdered service members who trusted you. You sold classified information that endangered American lives. You deserve exactly what you're getting, justice. Sentencing is set for 6 weeks from today." As Thornton was led away, Maya felt Diego squeeze her hand. "We did it, Mom. We actually did it." "Yeah, Mijo, we did." Outside the courthouse, they were mobbed by reporters. Maya made a brief statement. "Today's verdict doesn't bring back my husband or the other victims of this conspiracy, but it proves that no one, regardless of rank or position, is above the law. It proves that integrity matters, that truth matters, and that ordinary people can stand up against powerful corruption and win. I hope this encourages other service members who witness wrongdoing to come forward. The system doesn't always work perfectly, but today it worked. Justice has been served." The sentencing hearing 6 weeks later was brief but emotional. Families of Thornton's victims were allowed to make impact statements. Diego stood up, at 14 years old, and addressed the court. "Admiral Thornton killed my father when I was 11. He didn't just take my dad away, he took away the person I was supposed to become. I don't have my father to teach me how to be a man, to help me with life's challenges, to be there for important moments. My mom has been amazing, but she's had to be both parents, and that's not fair to her or to me. Admiral Thornton did that. He chose money over honor, and that choice destroyed my family. I hope his sentence reflects the magnitude of what he took from us. There wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. The judge sentenced Thornton to life in prison without possibility of parole, calling his crimes a betrayal of the highest order, and noting that the defendant showed no remorse, no recognition of the harm he caused, only entitlement and self-justification. After the sentencing, Maya received a call from Admiral Sarah Blackwood, the Chief of Naval Operations. "Commander Rodriguez, I wanted to personally thank you for your service to the Navy and to justice. What you did, exposing this corruption at great personal cost, exemplifies the highest ideals of military service." "Thank you, Admiral. I just wanted justice for my husband." "You got that, but you also did something more. You helped us identify and eliminate a cancer that had been growing in our community for years. We owe you a debt we can never fully repay, which is why I'm calling to make you an offer." "An offer?" "We'd like to reinstate your commission with back pay and benefits, promote you to commander, and offer you a position heading a new Integrity Oversight Division within Naval Special Warfare. Your experience, your analytical skills, your understanding of how these conspiracies work, we need that expertise to prevent this from ever happening again." Maya was stunned. "Admiral, I appreciate the offer, but I've been out for 3 years, and I have a son who needs stability. The position would be shore duty in Washington, regular hours, no deployments. You could be a full-time parent and still serve. And Diego could have access to military education benefits, housing support, all the things you both deserve." Maya thought about it. The idea of putting the uniform back on, of officially returning to the Navy, was both appealing and terrifying. "Can I have time to think about it?" "Of course, talk to your son, take a week. But Commander, the Navy needs you. We need people who have the courage to stand up to corruption at the highest levels. We need leaders who put integrity above career advancement. We need you." That evening, Maya discussed the offer with Diego over pizza, their tradition for important conversations. "What do you think?" she asked. "I think Dad would want you to say yes. He loved the Navy, believed in what it stood for. And Mom, you've been happier these past months working with the FBI, doing analysis, using your skills. You should get to keep doing that. But it would mean being more public, having our lives more scrutinized. People would know who we are, where we are." "People already know that. The trial was national news. We can't go back to hiding, so we might as well be open about who we are." Maya smiled at her son's logic. "When did you get so wise?" "I learned from my mom. She's kind of a badass." The next day, Maya called Admiral Blackwood. "I accept the position. When do I start?" 30 days. That gives you time to prepare Diego for the transition, finalize your FBI work, and get ready to return to active duty. Welcome back, Commander Rodriguez." The reinstatement ceremony took place at the Pentagon, attended by senior Navy leadership and media representatives. Maya wore her dress uniform, the same one she'd hidden in a closet for 3 years, now bearing the insignia of her new rank. Admiral Blackwood administered the oath of office, then pinned commander rank on Maya's collar. "Commander Elena Rodriguez, on behalf of the United States Navy, welcome back to active duty. Your service and sacrifice have been an inspiration to us all." The assembled officers applauded. Maya spotted Diego in the front row, wearing his father's Navy cross on a ribbon around his neck, something he was entitled to do as Carlos's child. After the ceremony, several reporters asked for her thoughts on returning to service. 3 years ago, I left the Navy because I believed it had failed me and my family," Maya said. "I believed the institution I devoted my life to had allowed corruption to kill my husband and then tried to cover it up. Today, I'm returning because that institution proved it can change, that it can hold itself accountable, that integrity still matters. I'm not naive enough to think all problems are solved. There's still work to do, still a culture to change. But today proves that work is possible." One reporter asked, "Do you consider yourself a hero?" Maya thought about that. "No, heroes are people who sacrifice without knowing if it will matter. I'm just someone who refused to accept injustice. I'm someone who had skills and used them." I'm someone who got lucky. I survived something that could have killed me, and I had allies who supported me when I needed it most. That's not heroism. That's just stubbornness combined with good fortune. What about Steel Cobra? Will you use that call sign again? That call sign belonged to an operator who served in a different time and context. I'm not that person anymore. I'm Commander Rodriguez working in integrity oversight. The work is different, but the mission is the same. Protect the people who serve, ensure the institution deserves their loyalty, and make sure corruption never gets this big a foothold again. Over the following months, Maya built the Integrity Division from the ground up. She recruited a team of investigators, analysts, and legal experts, all of them people with proven records of putting truth above career advancement. The division's mandate was to investigate allegations of wrongdoing at all levels, protect whistleblowers from retaliation, and recommend systemic changes to prevent corruption. It had direct reporting authority to the Chief of Naval Operations, bypassing the chain of command that had allowed previous corruption to flourish. Diego continued thriving. At 15, he'd become passionate about coding and ethical hacking, skills he said he wanted to use to help catch bad guys like Mom does. He'd also started volunteering with a veterans organization, helping family members of fallen service members navigate military bureaucracy. "Dad would be proud of you," Maya told him one evening, "of who you're becoming." "He'd be proud of you too, Mom. You finished his mission." "We finished it together. You've been incredibly brave through all of this." 1 year after Thornton's conviction, Maya received word that additional conspirators had been identified through her FBI work. In total, 17 people were facing charges related to the espionage ring, including a 3-star general who'd been protected by his position and connections. The investigation was ongoing, and Maya knew it would be years before all the trials concluded and all the damage was fully assessed. But the conspiracy had been exposed, the main players were in custody, and the system that had allowed it to happen was being reformed. On the anniversary of Carlos's death, Maya and Diego visited Arlington National Cemetery. They placed flowers at his grave, not in mourning, but in celebration of justice finally achieved. "You did it, babe," Maya said to the headstone. "Everyone involved in your death has been caught. The truth is out. Your name is cleared. Your honor is restored." Diego placed his hand on the gravestone. "We got them, Dad. Just like you taught us, we finished the mission." As they walked back to their car, Diego asked, "Do you think Dad knows, like wherever he is?" "I think if any part of consciousness survives death, then yes, he knows, and he's proud of us." "Good, because I want him to know we never gave up, that we fought for him even when it was scary and hard." "He knows, Mijo. I'm sure he knows." That evening, back at their apartment, a real home now, not a safe house or temporary refuge, Maya sat at her desk reviewing her division's latest case files. Each one represented a service member brave enough to report wrongdoing, to stand up against corruption despite potential consequences. Her job was to ensure they were protected, that their reports were taken seriously, that the system worked the way it was supposed to. It wasn't glamorous work. It involved endless paperwork, bureaucratic battles, and fighting against institutional resistance to change. But it mattered. Steel Cobra had been an operator, striking fast and hard against enemies. Commander Rodriguez was a builder, constructing systems and protections that would outlast any individual case. Both roles required courage, both served the mission, both honored Carlos's memory. As Maya prepared for bed that night, she looked at the photograph on her nightstand, her wedding picture with Carlos, both of them young and full of hope. She no longer kept it hidden in a box. It sat proudly displayed, a reminder of who they'd been and what they'd built together. "Mission accomplished," she whispered to the photograph. "Finally, mission accomplished." And for the first time in 4 years, she believed it. Part 5. 2 years after Thornton's conviction, Maya stood before a congressional committee, testifying about military accountability and integrity reforms. At 39, she'd become one of the Navy's most visible advocates for ethical leadership and systemic change. "The corruption that killed my husband wasn't an isolated incident," she told the assembled senators and representatives. "It was the predictable result of a system that prioritizes loyalty over integrity, that protects rank over truth, that makes it dangerous to report wrongdoing. We've made progress since then, but we have much further to go." The hearing was being broadcast live, and Maya knew Diego was watching from his high school, probably with half his class. At 16, he'd become oddly comfortable with his mother's public profile, even proud of it. After her testimony, Senator Patricia Williams, chair of the Armed Services Committee, approached Maya privately. "Commander Rodriguez, your reforms have been impressive, but I'm curious, do you ever regret the path you took? The 3 years in hiding, the illegal surveillance, the risks you took?" Maya considered the question honestly. "Every day, Senator, I regret that it was necessary. I regret the time I can't get back with my son. I regret that Carlos isn't here to see justice served. But do I regret fighting for the truth? No, because the alternative was accepting that powerful people can murder with impunity, and I couldn't live with that. Some critics say you're too aggressive, that your division investigates too many complaints, that you're creating a culture of suspicion and undermining command authority." "Those critics are usually the ones who benefit from lack of oversight," Maya replied. "Senator, command authority is important, but it can't be absolute. When commanders know their decisions will be scrutinized, when they understand they'll be held accountable for wrongdoing, they make better choices. That's not undermining authority, that's supporting genuine leadership." The exchange made headlines, with some praising Maya's commitment to accountability, while others criticized her as too radical, too willing to question authority. But Maya had learned to live with controversy. Doing the right thing rarely made everyone happy. That evening, she returned home to find Diego in the kitchen, making dinner, a role reversal that had become common as he got older and more independent. "You were great today," he said, stirring pasta sauce. "Very mom-like, all serious and making senators uncomfortable." "That's my job, making powerful people uncomfortable when they should be." "I got accepted to the Naval Academy," Diego said suddenly, his tone carefully casual. Maya froze. "What?" "I applied, didn't tell you because I wasn't sure I'd get in. But I did. Early acceptance, full scholarship. I can start next year after graduation." Maya sat down, processing this information. Diego at the Naval Academy, following in his parents' footsteps despite everything he'd witnessed about the military's flaws. "Why?" she asked simply. Diego turned from the stove to face her. "Because of you and Dad. Because you showed me that the military has problems, but those problems can be fixed. Because I want to be part of that, someone who serves with integrity, who stands up when things are wrong, who makes the institution better. You saw what the military did to us. How it failed your father, forced us into hiding, made your childhood unstable and scary." "I saw what corrupt people in the military did," Diego corrected. "I also saw you fight back and win. I saw the system eventually work, even if it took too long. I saw that one person with courage can make a difference. That's the legacy I want to build on." Maya felt tears threatening. "You know this is going to be hard. You'll face expectations because of who your parents were. People will compare you to us, question whether you earned your place or just inherited it. Let them question. I'll prove myself the same way you did, through competence, dedication, and refusing to compromise my integrity." "God, you sound just like your father." "I'll take that as a compliment." They ate dinner together, discussing the practical aspects of Diego's decision. How he'd need to maintain his grades, stay physically fit, prepare for the rigors of academy life. Maya offered advice drawn from her own experience while internally processing the reality that her son would soon be entering the same institution that had nearly destroyed their family. After Diego went to bed, Maya pulled out her journal, the one she'd kept since Carlos's death, documenting her investigation, her fears, her hopes. She read through entries from 3 and 4 years ago when she'd been hiding and terrified, unsure if justice would ever be served. Then she wrote a new entry. "Diego's going to the Naval Academy. Part of me wants to stop him, to protect him from the institution that took so much from us. But I know I can't and shouldn't. He's making this choice with full knowledge of what the military is and isn't. He's choosing to serve despite its flaws because he believes, as Carlos and I believed, that the institution is worth fighting for. I'm terrified and proud in equal measure. But mostly, I'm grateful that my son has the courage to make his own path, even when it's the harder road." The next morning, Maya was called to an emergency meeting at the Pentagon. Admiral Blackwood met her with a grave expression. "We have a situation. One of the officers convicted in the Thornton conspiracy has agreed to cooperate fully with ongoing investigations. His testimony has implicated someone we never suspected, Vice Admiral Richard Sterling, currently assigned to Pacific Fleet Command. Maya felt her stomach drop. Sterling was a four-star admiral, one of the most senior officers in the Navy, with a spotless reputation and decades of distinguished service. What's the evidence? Financial records showing payments from the same offshore accounts used in the Thornton conspiracy. Communication intercepts suggesting Sterling was actually running the espionage operation, with Thornton as a subordinate. The cooperating witness claims Sterling ordered several of the murders, including your husband's. Can we verify this independently? That's why I called you. Your division needs to conduct a preliminary investigation, quietly and carefully. If Sterling is involved, he'll have resources and connections we can't match. He could destroy evidence, eliminate witnesses, or simply use his position to shut down the investigation. How do you want me to proceed? Carefully build the case before he knows you're looking at him. And Maya, you need to understand the political stakes here. Going after a four-star admiral, if we're wrong, it could destroy careers and damage the Navy's credibility. But if we're right and we don't act, we're complicit in allowing espionage and murder to continue. Maya assembled her team that afternoon, 5 investigators and analysts she trusted completely. She explained the situation and the stakes, giving each of them the option to decline involvement. This is career-threatening work, she said honestly. If Sterling is innocent and we pursue him, we'll be finished. If he's guilty and we expose him, he'll use every resource he has to destroy us before we can bring him down. I won't order anyone to take this risk. Every single person on her team volunteered immediately. We didn't join this division to play it safe, one investigator said. We joined to expose corruption regardless of rank. Let's do this. Over the next 3 months, Maya's team conducted one of the most intensive investigations of her career. They traced financial transactions through multiple layers of shell companies and offshore accounts. They analyzed communications patterns looking for connections between Sterling and the known conspirators. They reviewed operational decisions Sterling had made over a 5-year period, looking for patterns that suggested compromised intelligence or deliberate sabotage. And gradually, a picture emerged that was both damning and disturbing. Sterling hadn't just been involved in the conspiracy, he'd created it. He'd recruited Thornton and the others, established the offshore financial networks, and brokered the relationships with foreign intelligence services. He'd personally ordered the deaths of service members who'd gotten too close to discovering the truth. Including Carlos. Maya found herself working 15-hour days, driven by a renewed sense of urgency. Sterling was still in a position of authority, still potentially compromising operations, still dangerous to anyone who might expose him. But building a case against a 4-star admiral required evidence that was absolutely overwhelming. Every piece had to be verified through multiple sources. Every conclusion had to be supported by indisputable facts. During this period, Diego worried about his mother's health. She was losing weight, sleeping poorly, consumed by the investigation. "Mom, you need to take care of yourself," he said one evening, finding her still working at 11 p.m. "I will after we catch him." "You always say that, after we catch the next person, after we finish the next investigation. When does it end?" Maya looked at her son, nearly 17 now, mature beyond his years, caring for her as much as she cared for him. "You're right," she admitted. "I'm obsessing. But Diego, this is the person who ordered your father killed, the person at the top of the conspiracy. If we don't get him, everything we've accomplished feels incomplete. Dad wouldn't want you to destroy yourself getting justice for him." "No, he wouldn't, but he would want me to finish the mission." "The mission is already finished. Thornton's in prison, the conspiracy is exposed, you've reformed the system. At some point you have to let it be enough." His words stayed with Maya over the following days. Was she pursuing justice or vengeance? Was this about protecting the Navy or about her personal need to catch everyone responsible for Carlos's death? The answer, she realized, was both, and that was okay. Justice and personal investment weren't mutually exclusive. She could want Sterling caught for professional reasons and personal ones simultaneously. The break in the case came from an unexpected source, Sterling's ex-wife. She'd been divorced from the Admiral for 2 years and had maintained silence about her knowledge of his activities. But when she learned he was under investigation for murder, she came forward with evidence she'd secretly gathered during their marriage. "I knew Richard was doing something illegal," she told Maya's team. "I didn't know the extent, but I knew. So I copied files, recorded conversations, saved documents. Call it insurance or call it conscience. But when I read about your husband's death and realized Richard might be responsible, I couldn't stay quiet anymore." The evidence she provided was devastating. Financial records Sterling thought he'd destroyed, recordings of conversations where he discussed the conspiracy, even copies of orders he'd given to Thornton and others. With this evidence, combined with what Maya's team had already gathered, the case was complete. Admiral Blackwood authorized Sterling's arrest, conducted with maximum security to prevent him from destroying additional evidence or fleeing. The arrest of a four-star admiral made international news. The story of a conspiracy reaching the highest levels of U.S. military leadership, of dozens of deaths and years of espionage, dominated headlines for weeks. Maya was asked to testify before Congress again, this time about how someone like Sterling could rise to such high rank while operating a criminal enterprise. "The answer is both simple and complex," she told the committee. Simple because Sterling was politically skilled, knew how to cultivate relationships, understood how to protect himself. Complex because the military's culture of deference to senior rank made it difficult for anyone to question him. When a four-star admiral says something is classified or need to know, people accept that. They don't ask questions, and that creates opportunities for corruption to thrive. What reforms would prevent this in the future? We need independent oversight of senior officers. We need stronger protections for whistleblowers. We need to change the culture so that questioning authority is seen as responsible rather than disloyal. And we need consequences for those who abuse their rank to commit crimes, consequences that are swift, certain, and severe enough to deter future corruption. The trial of Vice Admiral Richard Sterling began 9 months after his arrest. Given the classified nature of much evidence, large portions were held in closed session. But the public portions were devastating enough. The prosecution showed how Sterling had built his criminal enterprise over years, had personally ordered 7 murders, had sold classified information that led to the deaths of American personnel and foreign assets working with U.S. intelligence. The defense tried to argue Sterling had been entrapped, that his ex-wife's evidence was fabricated, that he was being scapegoated for institutional failures. But the evidence was overwhelming. Maya testified for 2 days, walking the jury through the investigation that had uncovered Sterling's role. She explained Carlos's original concerns, how those concerns had led to his death, how the conspiracy had operated for years before being exposed. During cross-examination, Sterling's defense attorney tried to paint Maya as obsessed with revenge. "Commander Rodriguez, isn't it true you've devoted the past 5 years to destroying anyone connected to your husband's death, regardless of their actual guilt?" "No, I've devoted the past 5 years to exposing a criminal conspiracy that killed my husband and others. There's a difference between revenge and justice. You broke laws during your investigation. You conducted illegal surveillance, obtained evidence without warrants, essentially acted as a vigilante rather than trusting the proper authorities. I acted when proper authorities failed. I acted when the system was corrupted from within. And I'd do it again because sometimes the only way to fix a broken system is to work outside it temporarily until you can repair it from the inside." "So you believe you're above the law?" "I believe justice is more important than my personal legal liability. If I'd stayed within the law and let my husband's killers go free, that would have been the greater moral failure." The jury deliberated for 5 days, longer than expected, suggesting serious internal debate. When they finally returned, the verdict was mixed. Guilty on conspiracy charges, guilty on espionage, guilty on obstruction of justice. But not guilty on the murder charges. The jury apparently felt the evidence, while suggestive of Sterling ordering the deaths, wasn't strong enough to prove murder beyond reasonable doubt. It was a partial victory, but one that left Maya feeling hollow. Sterling would spend the rest of his life in prison, but not specifically for killing Carlos. After the verdict, she sat alone in the courthouse hallway, processing her emotions. Commander Reeves found her there. "It's not perfect," he acknowledged. "But Maya, Sterling is going away forever. Justice has been served even if it's not complete justice. He murdered my husband. The jury should have convicted him for that. They convicted him for everything we could prove beyond reasonable doubt. In our system, that's how justice works. It's not always satisfying, but it's better than the alternative. Maya knew he was right intellectually, but emotionally it stung. She'd wanted Sterling convicted on every charge, wanted him to be held fully accountable for every death he'd caused. But justice in the real world was messy, imperfect, compromised by the limitations of evidence and the reasonable doubts of juries. That evening, she sat with Diego and explained the verdict. "So he's guilty but not for killing Dad specifically?" Diego asked. "He's guilty of running the conspiracy that led to Dad's death. The jury just couldn't convict him specifically of ordering the murder without stronger direct evidence." "That seems wrong." "It is wrong, but Diego, we got him. He's going to prison for life. The conspiracy is destroyed. The institution is being reformed. We won even if the victory isn't perfect." Diego thought about that. Would Dad be satisfied with this? "Your father was a realist. He understood that justice doesn't always look like we want it to. He'd be satisfied that we exposed the truth, that we caught the people responsible, that we made the system better. The rest, the perfect convictions, the complete satisfaction, that's not always possible in the real world." Over the following year, Maya watched as Sterling's conviction triggered additional reforms throughout the military. Congress passed legislation strengthening oversight of senior officers, creating independent review boards for corruption allegations, and enhancing protections for whistleblowers. The Navy created a new position, Inspector General for Integrity, reporting directly to the Secretary of the Navy with broad authority to investigate wrongdoing at any level. Maya was offered the position but declined. "I've done my part," she told Admiral Blackwood. "It's time for someone else to carry this forward." Instead, she accepted a position teaching at the Naval War College, educating future officers about ethical leadership and integrity in military service. "I can do more good teaching the next generation than I can investigating the current one," she explained to Diego. "The long-term solution to corruption isn't better investigations. It's better leaders who won't tolerate corruption in the first place." Diego graduated high school with honors and entered the Naval Academy as planned. Maya attended the induction ceremony, watching her son take the oath of service with pride and trepidation. "You know what you're getting into?" she asked him after the ceremony. "I know it won't be easy. I know I'll face challenges because of who my parents were. But Mom, I also know it's worth it. Dad proved that, and so did you." At the academy, Diego excelled. He studied engineering and ethics, joined the debate team, and became known for asking hard questions about military culture and leadership responsibility. During his second year, he wrote a paper about his father's death and the conspiracy that had led to it. The paper was published in the Academy's journal and won several awards for its insights into how institutional culture can enable or prevent corruption. "Dad would be proud of that paper," Maya told him when they met for Parents' Weekend. "I hope so. I tried to honor both the truth and his memory, show that what happened to him wasn't just a personal tragedy, but a systemic failure that needs to be understood and prevented." "You did that, and more. You showed how one family's fight for justice can create change that protects everyone." As Diego's graduation from the academy approached, Maya reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. From the devastating phone call announcing Carlos's death, through 3 years of hiding and fear, through investigations and trials and reforms, to this moment. Her son about to become a naval officer, carrying forward the legacy of integrity that both his parents had embodied. It hadn't been the path she would have chosen, but it was the path they'd walked, and it had led somewhere meaningful. The night before Diego's graduation, Maya visited Arlington National Cemetery. She stood before Carlos's grave, as she did several times a year, and told him about their son. "He's graduating tomorrow, babe, becoming an officer like we were. He's going to be good at it, smart, ethical, brave. Everything you would have wanted him to be." She placed a hand on the gravestone. "I finished the mission. Everyone involved in your death has been caught. The system has been reformed. Diego is safe and thriving. I kept my promise. I protected him, got justice for you, and built something better for the future. You can rest now. We all can." The graduation ceremony was held on a perfect May morning. Maya sat among the other proud parents, watching as Diego and his classmates,